Hello and welcome to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host and City Manager, Doug Bartosh. And we're here today with Robert Winiecke to talk about projects. Robert's our city engineer, and he's working on several projects right now. And we should probably start with the one that probably has the focus of most people in town, which is Mingus Avenue.
I think so, yeah. Good morning, Doug. Mingus Avenue obviously is the one that everybody's mostly concerned about because that's their main thoroughfare through the city, other than 89A, obviously, but we don't control that one. Right now, obviously, we're under construction. We've been under construction since October. It feels like we're going very slow. There's been a few issues along the way. You know, we put a water line project in. The water line is a little shallow, so we've had to work around that a little bit, and there's been some other issues. But we're getting to the point where we're getting AB down, which is our base course that goes beneath the asphalt, and then we're going to be paving asphalt to be able to move forward with having the south half of the road open, and then move on to the north half and try to get this finished up. With that said, we got a little bit of time for that to happen. You know, originally we had planned to pave 6th Street last week. Yes, last week. But the weather kind of got in the way for us. We have to have certain temperatures on the subgrade and everything and rising, and we didn't have that. So ADOT said, no, we can't go ahead and pave. Unfortunately, that put us off a couple weeks. So right now we opened up 6th Street to go ahead and drive on the AB so we can continue putting AB down. And that's kind of what we've got. So they've been spreading from 6th Street east and west to go ahead and put that AB down to make it so when we have the pavers on in town, we can go ahead and do more asphalt in one shot. So we're moving towards that. So right now the plan is the week of March 12th at 12th, 13th, and 14th, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they're going to be paving asphalt on 6th Street and on Mingus Avenue. So they're going to start on 6th Street, go from the south towards the intersection, get that all paved out, and then they'll go ahead and start by the roundabout in Cottonwood Village, and they'll work their way to the east and pave the south half of the road as well.
And, you know, just the importance of the temperature related to putting down asphalt. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have the correct temperature, what happens?
If you don't have the correct temperature, you're going to have a difficult time getting your density on your pavement. It's going to cool down too fast, and you won't be able to go ahead and compact it. And then what happens is you have voids inside your pavement structure that water can get into, and it'll help prematurely age the pavement. So we really don't want to have to deal with that. There's some other mechanisms we can look at where they can do some additional testing on it in cooler weather. I've asked ADOT to go ahead and consider that. If we run into more issues with the weather, that way we can keep things moving forward. So they can come out with nuclear gauges, do testing on the asphalt that way. They can actually come back, they can take some core samples. You know, I'm sure you've seen if you drive out Cornville Road by Verde Santa Fe, you'll see like a series of 3 little circles in the middle of the road, kind of between the 2 wheel paths. They go ahead and do that where they'll take a sample, take it back to the lab, run the tests on it to see if you have sufficient density through there. So there's other ways we can work around it, but we're trying to do it within the natural kind of form of weather for the most part is the plan.
You know, and you've mentioned ADOT a couple of times, and recognizing that this is actually a city street.
It's a city street, yeah.
Why is ADOT involved in this particular
Of course,
project?
ADOT's involved because the city has federal funds that are going into this project. And the FHWA, which is Federal Highway Administration, says that the city cannot administer a fund with a project with federal funds going to it. It has to be done at the ADOT level. So that's why we have ADOT involved. I think it's about $800,000 we have of federal funds going into the project. So because of that, we have the ADOT oversight. Okay. Is what happens. So, you know, we're the benefactor of the project in the long run, so we have some say as to what goes on, but for the most part, this is really an ADOT project. Okay. You know, unfortunately, it's not a long linear highway. It's actually in the middle of the city, so we've got that added layer of complexity.
Well, and again, as you've talked about, I mean, this seems like it's been a very long project because it really started with a new water line that we installed all the way down Mingus Avenue. And that'll improve fire flows.
Fire flows and just capacity in general in the system and redundancy for that matter.
Yeah, so that'll help. And we had to have utilities moved. And
correct.
Those kind of things.
Yeah, we had a couple utilities at the intersection there at 6th Street. They were in the way. They had to go ahead and, I think it was electric, they went underground with on the west side of the road because we had our sidewalk that was extending and it conflicted with the poles. And then with that, I think telephone and cable TV were on those poles as well, and they undergrounded at the same time. So,
you know, and I think a lot of times, as probably I did, you know, before I got into this business is, you know, why is this taking so long? I mean, you know, you pull up the pavement, and, you know, you slap down some new pavement, and you're done.
This is true, but you know, we want to make sure there's no soft spots under that pavement, so we're not coming back 2 years down the road and redoing it.
Well, and obviously, you know, with all the utilities, and then we're putting in new sidewalks, and not completely new, but where we need new sidewalks, we're putting in new sidewalks. So eventually, Mingus Avenue will have sidewalks on both sides all the way down to Main Street.
And you kind of touched on it for, you know, we tried to save what we could to be economical. You know, if it was in good shape before and it was meeting our requirements, we would keep it. And if it wasn't, we'd have to take it out to put some scuppers in or do some other things to get the drainage off the roadway. We did that to go ahead and improve just the whole corridor. So yes, exactly.
You know, and we're going to talk a little bit about flood projects later on, but it was interesting to see the several large scuppers that they put in on the south side of the street. And talk a little bit about how that design's going to work.
Okay. What we did is we changed the roadway profile itself from a traditional crown, which would be you would have half your roadway on one side, half the other of the center line would be kind of peaked like this. What we did is we super elevated it, so we made it so it goes just one way. So it'll go from the north to the south, so we can carry the drainage on the south half of the roadway. It made sense because we already have the big ditch there on the south side of the road, Railroad Wash, to go ahead and get that water to it as quickly as we could. The scuppers are a way that we can go ahead and get that water to collect in areas and get into that ditch.
So my assumption is it'll help clear that street of water.
It should help clear that street of water fairly quickly. If we have a very large rain event, we may have some water ponding in the roadway to get in there, but we have the double turn lane that we're doing along the whole stretch that would allow people to still pass.
Now, because of that elevation in the road, do we anticipate that the north side of the road will be raised up very much?
Actually, it shouldn't have as much of an effect because we moved the curb line on the north side 2 feet to the south. So kind of offset that a little bit. So I don't remember off the top of my head what the plan elevations were, but I think it was within a couple inches of what's existing today.
And so they'll finish up that second week in March. They'll pretty much finish up the south side. And then begin on the north side of Mingus Avenue.
The plan is once they get the south side paved, they'll go ahead and they'll put down some temporary markings. We're looking at doing something that's not paint, because we don't want to go ahead and put a temporary stripe down, have to obliterate it, and then have that scar for the rest of the life of that pavement. So we're looking at doing maybe some raised pavement markers or some other things that are maybe a little more effective, less detrimental, because we only have about 22 foot or 23 foot of width on that to go ahead and do the road. So trying to get 2 11-foot lanes through there is going to be pretty tight. So we're going to do that, but we'll try to look at some different ways to do the road or the striping. So that way when we come back, we can go ahead and just stripe it once at the end and not have any scars.
So this first phase from Willard to essentially the alignment of 8th Street, when would you anticipate that that's going to be done?
The ADOT contract time for that expires on June 30th of this year. I would think we should be on target for that. There might be a little bit of a week or two lag on that. I'm not certain at this point. Hopefully moving into the spring, which we haven't had much weather issues at this point, but it seems like right now when we're getting ready to pave, we hit our first real cool wet spell for the most part. You know, barring a lot of additional complications from that, or we should be able to pick up some time, I believe, going forward, and maybe still make that date.
Okay. Let's go ahead and take our first break. And, you know, even though we'll finish that first half in June, there is another half to this that is going to go under construction as well. So come back and learn a little bit more about the plan for Mingus Avenue.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction. A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and I'm here with Robert Winiecke, our city engineer, and we're talking about Mingus Avenue. And we talked about, you know, this was actually kind of a three-phase project.
Yeah,
people probably don't remember that we did Willard west to 89A,
Right.
and then now we're doing Willard to 8th. Which is kind of the second phase, and we've got a third phase.
Yes, we do.
And tell us where that's at.
The third phase is currently under design. We're getting close to about 60% plans. So we're hoping to have 60% plans here in the next few weeks, so we can actually bring that to a council work session so they can see where the progress has been made from our last discussion with them at the middle of September was on that. So, you know, looking at taking the drainage from 11th Street, 12th Street area, trying to get some of that over to Railroad Wash, make sure we don't have any negative implications from doing that, to help alleviate some of that undersized stormwater system that we have over at Main Street. That's part of the reason to do that. But we also have some other things that we're looking at with traffic control measures, trying to improve what we have at 12th Street today and to make that better. So we should have all that incorporated here soon that we can bring forward and let the council see as well as the public.
You know, and probably people would ask, you know, why do you break it up? Why didn't you just do the whole, you know, from Willard to Main Street?
Right. And it would have been a nice thing to go ahead and do, but, you know, we talked about in the last segment, having federal funds involved in the project makes things a lot more challenging for us to administer. We would have had to have this whole project be administered by ADOT. So I don't think we really would have liked to have had that. And, you know, we're going into a stretch of roadway that's more residential than the commercial area that we have, that we're doing right now. And I think being able to have the local control over that is better for the public because we can interact more freely with the public.
Well, and I know one of the things we find when it's federal dollars, there's requirements under what they call Davis-Bacon.
Yes.
And it ends up costing us quite a bit more.
Yeah, there is a lot of extra costs that go into the projects when you have to involve Davis-Bacon because they set wage rates for different classifications of what the employee is doing, if it's an equipment operator or a supervisor or even, sorry, the comma what I was going with next just popped out of my head.
Well, and then the environmental studies.
Yeah, that adds a lot of time to go ahead and get that cleared through NEPA and everything. So the state is actually working on some things to help try and minimize some of those impacts, but it still will take a little bit of a while. But if we can alleviate those requirements, then that makes it easier for us to go ahead and administer and move forward with these projects in a more timely fashion.
And certainly, you know, probably a lot of people don't understand that or aren't aware that not only are roadways built for transportation, but they're kind of really built for flood control too.
Yeah, there's an implication of flooding for, anytime you have impervious surface, you're going to have greater runoff coming from that. So you got to have a place for that water to go. And we're trying to go ahead and accommodate that with the design. And at some point, if we exceed a certain level of storm event for design, then our road has to go ahead and be able to take care of that. But we don't want to have it where our road takes everything, it's impassable, and you shut the whole community down because you had a little bit of rain. Yeah. So there's a few implications that go into that, right? Yeah,
because I know it is a challenge in terms of looking at where we direct it,
right,
down Railroad Wash and trying to get it to stay in railroad wash.
Well, I don't think it's the issue is getting it to stay in railroad wash when we get it there. The issue is just to make sure that we don't put too much water in too quickly, that it hits a peak flow already coming down the wash, that we cause any sort of negative flooding impacts downstream. We're not allowed to do that based on FEMA guidelines and everything, so we have to take all that into consideration.
So again, looking at the timeline of this second phase, what is that looking like at this point?
We're targeting design being completed by the end of May, so that way we can move into bidding and getting a contractor on board probably July timeframe and be able to start thereafter. So unfortunately, we're going to be living with construction on this probably for the next year, but the good thing is we can put up with it for one more year on the whole stretch. We're going to be done with this for a good 20 years.
Yeah.
We might have a little bit of maintenance that we have to do periodically in between to preserve that pavement so we can get 20 plus years of life on it. But, those are the minor things where we just have to shut it down or do a rolling closure to do a slurry seal or some other type of effort on that.
And certainly I think everybody saw that Mingus Avenue was in pretty bad shape.
It was in bad shape, and of course, because we've had to shift traffic around on the sections right now, you can see it's in worse shape. And of course, because we did the water line, you have the patchwork that was done, and now on the edges of those patches is starting to unravel as well, because we've got some damage that was caused to that pavement. But we will be fixing that when we come through with the whole project.
And probably the only other piece of this that is very important is to make sure that we have real viable sidewalks on Mingus Avenue, because we have two schools that are.
We do have two schools over
too,
there, and it's the way the school is set up. I think there's no bus scene within 1 mile of the school itself. So you've got anybody that lives in that area, they commute by walking or bicycle, or they get dropped off by their parents. So to have good infrastructure for those kids to use to get to and from home and what they're doing it's vital to the community, and it's a good thing for us to do.
And the other thing you mentioned is bicycles. We'll have some nice bike lanes on Mingus Avenue as well.
We're looking to accommodate bicycles very much where we can. We have they've got some unique ways of trying to deal with it at the intersection of 12th and Mingus. Again, we'll see that when we bring that forward to the council, so that way they can see what we're planning there.
And I know for some people it's a 4-letter word, but we are looking at a roundabout at 12th Street. And, And so not to surprise anybody, but it'll be a little bit different.
It's a little bit different. It's a mini roundabout, so in scale it's a lot smaller. It's being designed in a way that we can get our larger vehicles through there. We might have some restrictions on really large vehicles only being able to go straight through instead of making turns at 12th Street. But I think with a little bit of education and also looking at the circulation throughout the community and those neighborhoods, I think we can easily overcome any negative that may come from that.
And again, I think the end result will be we'll have a much more effective, friendlier street to use.
It'll be more efficient. It'll work better. It'll look better, obviously, and it'll be a nice, attractive, roadway and corridor for the city itself, something that I think everybody can be proud of. We go drive down Mingus and you can be happy. It'll probably be our most highly traveled street now because it'll be the smoothest, But, to avoid potholes, and it'll be efficient.
I think the other thing that's important to let people know is we really do try and communicate not only with the different people that either reside or have businesses along Mingus Avenue, but we try and communicate with the public too as traffic changes. And so we put media information out that the local papers and radios and broadcast, put it on our Facebook site, put it on our website. So, if you need an update, go to those sources, and there's also a number on the screen that is a number to Robert. And if you have questions, suggestions, complaints, ideas, Robert's the guy to send those to, so give him a call. Real quick, people probably were wondering what the heck was going on with the signal at Main and Mingus.
Yes, what was going on with the signal? Well, for a while there, it was on a timer, so it would just cycle through based on countdown of time on the the internal counters.
And so regardless whether there was a car in that left turn lane or not.
You had to wait. Exactly.
You had to wait.
It was very frustrating, and traffic would back up.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that occurred is we were switching from loop inductors that are actually in the pavement. If you get to the intersection, you can see some rectangles kind of cut in. Some of those had gone bad. They just weren't working very well anymore. So because we had the water line project coming in, we were going to be tearing those out in certain areas. The cost to go ahead and replace those was almost as much as it was to go ahead and replace it with the cameras that we just put in. So we elected to go forward with the camera system just from the standpoint of we didn't have anything in the pavement, makes it cleaner for the future. Well, they had some issues with the contractor that we have that put that in for us, had some issues with the camera system along the way. We originally got the cameras installed in December, right before Christmas. Thought we were going to be able to have them connect in, plug into the cabinet, and it was going to be fine. Well, there was an issue with one of the cards in the cabinet, so they had to go ahead and procure that. Well, procurement time took a little while. We had the holidays that slowed things up a little bit. We got that. They put that in. There was another issue that came up, so they had to order a whole new rack. So they ordered a new rack. The new rack came in. They put it in, and then they found there was one more issue, and the issue happened to be with the cabling, which went from the rack to the cameras themselves. Finally, last week, they were able to come out, get those camera patch cords working, put them in, and now we're running on the cameras. So you can go ahead and come up to the signal on any leg, and it'll go ahead and detect you, and it's working much smoother now.
I think that the people that was really frustrating for is the people who are out at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, like our police officers, and they sit there and have to go through the whole phase.
I agree. Or even people going through the 4 or 5 in the morning to try and
going to work,
maybe a shift or something at the hospital, and they'd get stopped and they'd have to wait 120 seconds for the thing to cycle. You're like, why do I have to wait? There's nobody here.
Yeah.
Type of deal. But now it's working, and it's interesting to watch in the morning. Even at the early hours when there's very few people going through there, you sit there on the corner and you watch. When a vehicle comes rolling up, and you see it within a couple seconds, it changes and they get to go.
Yeah.
So it's working now.
The bottom line is thank you to the public for your patience as we move through this. It is challenging. Let's go ahead and take our next break and come back and join us, and we're going to talk a little bit about some flood projects.
There are people who struggle with addiction and homelessness. Sometimes it may feel like there is nothing we can do to help.
But there is. You can make a tax-deductible donation and help those in need transition away from homelessness.
When you give someone a handout, you could actually be supporting an addiction.
A better life starts with better health, especially for those living in the streets.
Support solutions, not addictions. You can make a difference. Visit cottonwoodcares.com.
This is Bruce Morrow, Transportation Manager for Cottonwood Area Transit. Remember, we cover the entire Verde Valley and Sedona. Cottonwood Area Transit has you covered wherever you want to ride in the Verde Valley, all day, every day. Take Cottonwood Area Transit through Clarkdale, Verde Village, and from 26 locations in Cottonwood. With Verde Links, it's a quick and easy trip to Sedona every day. Don't forget our connectors to Camp Verde. Visit cottonwoodaz.gov for Cottonwood Area Transit and take a seat. Let's go ride.
Welcome back to Inside Cottonwood. I'm your host, Doug Bartosh, and we're here with Robert Winiecke, who's the city engineer, talking about capital projects. And we just finished talking about Mingus Avenue, and again, hang in there. We will get that completed, but it's going to take a little bit of time. The other thing that I know people are always interested in, and it seems like particularly during the summer months, because that's when we get our monsoons, and it seems to just fall down like crazy. So what are we doing? We've done a lot of stuff in terms of flood control, but what's going on right now?
Right now we're looking to work with the county to reauthorize our funding to finish off our citywide drainage master plan. So the update to that. So I haven't heard yet, but I know we've got the request in for that request to move forward on finishing that up. We had the first phase of that project was to go ahead and do a complete inventory of the stormwater system that we have. So that way we know what we have. And we were actually surprised to find out that there's a lot more out there than we thought we had. So good and bad, that means more maintenance and wonderful stuff. But, it's also a bad thing because you got more maintenance and all that other wonderful stuff that comes out of it.
Right.
But the second phase was to go ahead and look at all that in the whole city, break it up into little drainage areas, come up with flows that go into each of these, culverts, and be able to have a very good understanding as to what volume of water goes through there during certain rainfall events. So that way we can accommodate, if there's an improvement that needs to be done, you have an idea as to what's there and what you need to do and design to. And even for development purposes, they have a good idea to know what kind of water they have to worry about conveying.
And it's probably important to tell people that when you say we're working with the county, we're working with the county flood control district,
correct.
which we all pay into through your property tax. And so what we do is we leverage those dollars, and the county is very cooperative in terms of helping us with these projects, and we bring those tax dollars back to Cottonwood to help us deal with these flood issues.
Right, exactly.
And there's some other sources out there that we've also tapped into in terms of grant funding.
Right, exactly.
Because when you get into flood projects, they can be pretty expensive.
Well, any capital project can be expensive, but flooding is definitely one that has some major potentials to be very expensive.
And the other one that we're working on now is in the Old Town area.
Yep, our Old Town floodplain delineation study that's going on right now, that's actually being funded through the grant from the Yavapai County not Environmental Services, the Flood Control District. And they gave us money to go ahead and do that study, and we're moving forward to having that completed here in the next month or so. But we're moving to have the consultant come into the council on March 13th to go ahead and give a presentation as to what the modeling is showing at this point. And then our hope is that council is agreeable to what we're showing, and we can go ahead and move forward on submitting to FEMA and actually get the paperwork rolling on getting FEMA approval so we can revise the maps and have the new changes go into effect. Which the good thing of that is we'll be able to hopefully alleviate not alleviate, but lessen the burden for flood insurance policies on the residents of the Old Town area. So we'll be able to fix that, and that should be very helpful for everybody.
And this really became an issue when FEMA kind of extended the flood area. Yeah,
in 2013, when they did the revision on the Verde River itself, they had some work that was redone on Del Monte Wash, which is the area through Old Town, and that area got changed from an AE and an X shaded zone to an A zone. And A zone is basically the highest risk zone that you have shown on the flood insurance maps. And basically the reason is we don't know where the water is going at that point, how deep it is, any of that information. So what we're doing right now is we're trying to take that information that we had, make it better with additional survey, better modeling and everything, so we can go ahead and get a true idea what the depths of flooding are at the 1% annual chance occurrence, which is referred to as the 100-year flood kind of a deal. So by knowing that information, we can better assess what the risk is in Old Town. So if you live, say on the corner of 4th and Pinal, we can say with some reasonable certainty that, during that 100-year flood event, you may have, at the street, you might have 1.5 feet of water, but in the wash itself, you have about 10 feet of water. So that's what we're going to have come out of this study.
And if you haven't paid flood insurance, it can get pretty pricey.
It does,
so,
yes.
This would be a nice, it's a nice investment to try and help our citizens get out of the floodplain if at all possible, because then they don't end up having to pay that flood insurance.
Well, and if they do, the flood insurance rate should decrease because we'll take advantage of a different flood zone. The other thing that this study does is this kind of lays the groundwork for us to do additional improvements along the wash to actually alleviate a lot of the floodplain implications that we have for the whole area, making it easier for resale, for redevelopment, or new development in that area to go ahead and happen. So unfortunately, that type of project is not going to be cheap. It'd definitely be an expensive project. But I think the benefit that we could gain from doing something like that would definitely, far outweigh the initial cost that goes into it.
Yeah, because certainly it's not just the cost. It's the reality that if we did have a flood of that magnitude, I mean, people would
We would have displaced
Yeah,
individuals for a good period of time,
Yeah.
you know, because the floodwaters, they don't go down in a matter of minutes or hours. Sometimes it takes days to weeks before the water actually gets out of that area. And then at that point, now you're having to deal with waterlogged materials inside the house, and there's potential for mold growth and all the other negative things that come from having water inside a structure. You know, so yeah, it's something that we don't want to have to go through, and we hope that we never have to. But we have to realize that there is a potential for it, and we have to design for it accordingly. And that's why we do these studies.
You know, and just real quick, I know this last summer we had, you know, a pretty large rain event, pretty significant.
We actually had a couple of them last summer, yeah.
And those are always of concern, and we did have some problems, some people who were displaced and those kind of things. And so we're working on those as well to try and come up with solutions.
Right, yeah, we had a rather large list of different areas across the city that came up, and we brought that to the council, I think, in October as well, and kind of discussed that with them. And we're looking at, you know, moving forward on trying to be able to do some sort of improvements in those areas.
So again, on March 13th, City Council work session, 6 o'clock at the council chambers. If you're interested in the study that's being done down in the Old Town area, it really is pretty interesting to look at the modeling on it, and I think it'll be an interesting discussion. You're welcome to come join us. That pretty much takes up our time today on Inside Cottonwood. Thanks for joining us, and come back and see us again.